this session of Eve Speaks, or Angie Speaks Stronger Than Splinters, for our new series called Clarity in Crisis. And here we have our esteemed guest, Dr. Brown, whose 20 years as a life coach and a counselor will be very instrumental in helping us today in navigating the clarity that we need for this crisis or any crisis that we may be going through. So thank you, Dr. Brown, for joining us. And
me.
And I'm so grateful that you made the time to actually educate our audience on how to navigate the crisis that we're in. Your experience, as I said, will be very helpful this morning. And so can you tell me, before I go on, let me just say this. Today, we're going to talk about 6 tips for navigating clarity in crisis. Very critical. 6 tips is what we're going to be sharing. Somebody's trying to say hi. Hi. So number 1 is, I would love for you to define what a crisis is from your perspective and your experience.
So a crisis, according to the Chinese, is a mixture of opportunity and danger. Basically, it's a feeling of being overwhelmed, so overwhelmed that you're stuck, you're paralyzed, and you just can't move on. A very, very uncomfortable feeling, which I think many of us can identify with at this point, because we're all, most of us, stuck at home. You know, what you refer to in your e-speaks conversation as stuckdom.
You mean in my book, Peace Beyond the Splinter? Yes.
Well, I was thinking about that, but I was also thinking about the Facebook.
Okay.
We talk about that on Facebook, but yes, it's in your Splinters book. Mm-hmm.
So this idea of being stuck in a crisis or needing clarity in crisis is the fact that we're definitely searching for relief, right? And that's probably our number 1 goal right now, is to get relief. Everybody wants to be relieved when they're going through a crisis. But the truth is, there is always this main thing that interferes with reaching that goal of relief. We're seeking relief, but then what gets in the way of us getting to the relief? What is it that you find that in your experience have been the hindrance to people getting the relief they need as they try to get or maintain clarity in crisis?
I think one of the biggest things is the difficulty in managing emotions. You know, there's a number of them. Today, I want to focus on one that I think is particularly harmful, and that's fear. Now, fear in and of itself serves a purpose. Our emotions serve a purpose.
Right.
The purpose of our emotions is to alert us that things are going on around us and we need to do something about it. Mm-hmm. The problem comes in that if we've had negative emotion, if we've grown to see things from a negative perspective, everything is colored by that. Mm-hmm. It's hard to really focus and see what's going on around you. Now, it's kind of like trying to drive a car looking in the rearview mirror.
Right.
If you're going to crash. And so learning to manage fear helps you to refocus so that you could see where you're going and make the best possible choices of what's available to you.
So the number 1 goal is to overcome the fear that interferes with the clarity that we need. First, we're looking for relief, which we're usually, I know when I'm in trouble, I want immediate relief. And sometimes people do that by any means necessary. But if we have a healthy way to get to the relief, then we have to also address the fear that interferes with the clarity to reach our goals, the other goals that we may have besides relief. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And in terms of understanding relief, I think I'm just going to take a few minutes to explain fear. You see, according to Dr. Coase, he's a psychologist. He says that there are 4 types of fears.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote a book about it. It's called To Dare. It's easier to succeed than to fail. And in it, he talks about all the various things going on around the world that can cause us to be fearful. He says that there are 4 types of fears, and I support it. That's why I'm talking about it right now. There's realistic fear, like where we are right now. We are in a place where we could lose our lives, you know, depending on our health and, you know, our encounter with this coronavirus.
Right.
That's a real fear.
It's real.
And
Yeah.
we don't want to ignore that. You know, the other side of it, though, is that there are fears that are not real.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I mean, an incident happened. And when that incident happened, initially, it was real.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. I'll use from Dr. Kosa's book. He talks about a person, let's say you're on your way to an appointment, and because you're worried about so many, the problems of life, you know, your personal problems, the world problems, you know. Let's just say that you're one of those workers who can't stay home and work, you know. So you're crossing the street and you're not paying attention. And all of a sudden there's a Mack truck coming at you. That is a real danger. Now, fortunately, you know, in New York, we have good people. So a good Samaritan grabs you and the truck doesn't hit you. Well, you're all shook up and that fear is real, all right? However, here comes next week and you're going to your same appointment. And this time you're paying attention because, you know, you were afraid, genuinely afraid. But you've looked this way and that way up the street, looked all over looking for danger, and there's no more danger, but you can't cross the street. That's called exaggerated fear. And that kind of a fear is a fear that we will tend to have if we've had a bad past, where there's so many horrible things that have happened to us that we just consider this a norm. And what happens in that kind of situation is that the feelings, the things that you associate with that experience of the past, without even realizing it, you bring it to the present. And now you're fighting something that's no longer there. That's called an exaggerated fear. Now, fear can there's another type of fear that he talks about, and he calls it physiological fear. And that's when fear enters the body, okay? And it's kind of to simplify it, our thoughts settle in our body. There are a number of books that have been written about that, you know? And in which thoughts negative thoughts can create tension, and that tension settles in our body. And that tension is very real. We may not even be aware of it, but the reality of the situation is that, well, a simple explanation can be, if a mother sees her child, there are real stories of this, where a mother sees a child that's been hit by a car, mother or father, and you know, the whole body rearranges itself to get the strength to pull that car up and save the child. Now imagine that kind of stress continually on the body. It's going to affect some organ in the body. And the organ that it will affect is whatever's genetically weak in you, you see? And so there we have all kinds of chronic illnesses brought on by this negative experience from the past, which we re-experience again, even in the present. So that's physiological fear. And then the last type of fear he talks about is a fear that is not based on any reality. And that kind of fear, people are locked up for, you know?
Wow.
But today, what we're going to focus on is we're going to focus on exaggerated fear, because I think exaggerated fear is what many of us are dealing with, and that cause us to see always the worst in every situation. It's kind of like going outside and it's a sunny day. It's truly a sunny day. However, we have this shade of fear that we're looking through, and so everything looks awful.
I've certainly experienced that. So it's essentially fear is our ability to manage our thoughts.
Yes. And so
lack of fear. The lack of fear is the ability to manage our thoughts, right?
Well, mismanage our thoughts.
Okay, so mismanagement of our thoughts. Okay.
Because we're focusing on what used to be. You know, we're focusing, for example, on my example of the fact that I almost got hit.
Right.
Well, the past, you know, this is the next week, and I need to be able to cross that street so that I could go to work if I'm that worker, or to reach whatever my goal is, my intended goal, before I encountered that unhappy situation.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. It was very helpful in terms of understanding the types of fear. I don't think I had it broken down before in the past about physiological fear, the exaggerated fear, the realistic fear, and the fear that you're locked up for, just not based in any reality. So I think that's very useful information. So today, let's continue our conversation in talking about the 6 ways that we can maintain our clarity during the crisis.
Right. So this is 6 ways of managing unhealthy thoughts. The beginning, the first one is we have to just make time. We need to make time to think about what we're thinking about. And that may sound simple, but it's not. You know, most of us spend our time rushing. I think about the rat running in that, oh, not the rat, what do you call it? The
dog chasing his tail?
That's good enough. Okay. Yes. We spend so much time chasing our tail, and what is our tail? You know, we chase riches, we chase unhealthy relationships because we think they're healthy. We chase all sorts of things. And we get, oftentimes, you see, when we're thinking about things, it's not just the mind and the thought, it's emotion, see? Right. So sometimes we have, although it's unhealthy, and if I would sit down and talk to you and ask you, well, you know, why do you think you're not okay? You know that's not okay. But there are emotions tied into that thought that you don't want to let go of. And so that causes the confusion and therefore the need. But to be very honest with you, you know, it takes a lot of courage. You have to be a very courageous person to sit down and examine your thoughts, because most of the time, wherever we are in life, we've worked hard to get to that place, and we've decided,
we don't want to leave that place.
Oh, no, you know, it's uncomfortable. It's sort of the reason why when you, let's say you had girlfriends, and or it could be, you know, companion, whatever, and you decide, you know what, I no longer want to be in this place in my life. I want more. Well, your decision to want more was something that you arrived at. The other person, the other people, let's say just your girlfriends, they are not there yet.
Right.
Because they're not there, they don't want you to leave. And so they're going to give you all sorts of thoughts about why you should remain where you are.
Stay stuck.
You're stuck. And if you like them, if you really like them, you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice between, am I going to go this journey alone, which most trailblazers have to do, okay? And we don't like it. The good news is that if we make the trip, then sooner or later we're going to run into other people. But there has to be a period of being uncomfortable, discomfort. And that same kind of discomfort is what happens when you begin to examine your thoughts. And then if you have an investment, oh, I like this girlfriend. I like this girlfriend more than I want to get to my goal. You're not going to say that to yourself. You're going to make up excuses, you know?
Right.
All of this is, yes, you must take time to examine what you're thinking. Are those thoughts working for you, or are they working against you? And then if they're working against you, then, you know, you have to choose.
Right.
Healthy thoughts. Now, once you make that choice, the next thing is those unhealthy thoughts aren't going anywhere. They are stubborn little things. They are coming back.
Yeah, I call them thugs. In my books, I call them thugs. They will hound you into the ground.
They're both thugs. I remember having those thoughts, you know, when I was in school. In my previous interview, I talked about some uncomfortable things that happened, you know? And so it was, are you going to make it? Are you going to make it? Now, look, I am someone that's pretty much always done well in school. Oh, but I began to question myself. Oh, really? Oh, so you really think you're going to graduate from Columbia University? Why would you think that?
Chatter.
Where you came from?
Wow.
Okay, well, guess what? You have to talk to that thought. I did. And what I said to that thought was, listen, where I came from is not where I have to stay.
Exactly.
Okay, so you have to think about those thoughts. You have to resist them. No. Well, that's the third step. Doesn't help, it doesn't help end with resisting it, because they're going to come back.
Right.
You have to replace it with a healthy thought, you see? And, I think about anything. The truth of the matter is, if you can't even think of a healthy thought, think of something good that you experienced and that happened to you.
Right.
Basically, removing your mind, your thought from the negativity,
Right.
Once you've done that, you have to spend serious time meditating on that good thought. You have to think. Yes, we spend a lot of time meditating on negative thoughts, and that's easy. So instead of spending that time meditating on a negative thought, we could spend it meditating on the positive thought. But that's going to take a little more work, because scientists say in our mind we have these neural pathways, and it's kind of like a train. The train doesn't want to be derailed. And so you have to fight. Okay? But once you derail it and get back on the right track, then it becomes a little bit easier. So meditating on those thoughts help. And not only the inner meditation, but you have to say it out. You have to hear yourself say.
Talk to yourself.
You have to talk to yourself. See, someone talked to you to tell you what you're meditating on. And so you have to turn around and talk to yourself and tell yourself what the truth is.
I'm all that. I'm gonna tell myself.
A bag of chips too.
A bag of chips. I'm all that in a bag of chips. Okay.
So, perhaps, Angela, I read your book, which I thought was outstanding and wonderful and all that.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, but you talk about your experiences with thought and what you had to do to overcome it. So perhaps if you can share it with our audience, who I'm sure they've all read your book, okay? They will be able to relate to it, okay?
And if you haven't read my book, Peace Beyond the Splinter, Reclaim Your Promise of Peace and Profit from Anxiety's Grip Through Prayer. So yes, I struggle immensely with what I call the thug thoughts. In page 62 of my book, the principle that Dr. Brown just outlined, where you have to examine your thought. Here's an example from my own personal life. Because I struggle with an anxiety disorder that has dogged me for a good number of years, kept me stuck. It's the truth. I was in stuckdom. I set up shop in stuckdom. It's the only place I knew how to live. And I, like she said, I made a great investment in being there because that was all I was used to. In page 62, here's my example. I have a chart that will give you insight into how to address examining your thoughts or thinking about your thoughts and replacing them and meditating on them. So what my first thought in this example says, what if I go crazy? What if I have schizophrenia? An anxiety disorder is based in fear, a lot of fear. So you start to conjure up all the worst possible scenarios. My worst scenario is, or was, what if I have schizophrenia? And then I would have to find a scripture. I would find a scripture, and the scripture says, in Isaiah 26, verse 3, it says, you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. So that's my replacement. And my meditation was the prayer. And I would pray it out loud. God, I don't believe this is ever going to change, but I know you're bigger than my thoughts. You created my ability to think. Show me, help me, because I do not know how to keep my mind on you. That's an example of the unhealthy thought, my effort to resist it and to replace it and to meditate on it and so that it can stick. So I encourage you to pick up the book and kind of get your hands around this principle of replacing negative thoughts with the correct way of thinking.
So the ultimate answer, in my opinion, to maintaining clarity in crisis is to reprogram all negative thinking so that you see clearly what's before you. Now, the situation may be difficult. It may really be difficult. I think of a Jewish man, his name was Frankel. I think it was Frankel, during the during the periods where the Jews were being persecuted by Hitler. And this man was in a room where he was waiting to be thrown into the chamber to be burnt up. And everyone there had lost hope. See, that's the key thing about clarity and all of these reprogramming is to have hope.
Right.
How he managed to have hope. And his hope said to him, look around and see if you can find a solution. Now, that takes courage, and it's outstanding. Here's a whole line of people. You're in that line. You know everybody before you died. The probabilities that you will die, but you detach yourself for a moment. You get away from that thought, which was real. It's a real danger, but you have to detach from it. And he looked around the room to see, what can I do to help Viktor Frankl? That was his name, I think. What can I do? How can I save my life? And he looked down and he saw on the ground a pan with water in it and a rag. Apparently there was a housekeeper or someone like that who was cleaning up the room, and they left. And he ran to that pan and started cleaning, behaving as if he was the cleaner. And when the guard came, you know, the good news is that other people on the line didn't rat him out, okay? We got to watch out for those.
Of course.
In his case, they didn't. Maybe they were too depressed, too sad. They were lost in their negativity and their hopelessness, okay? And The guard looked at him and he saw he was a Jew. And so he said some nasty thing to him. Get over there and clean that place. He said, I won. So he wasn't close to the door. His cleaning, this is purpose, y'all. His cleaning was, I'm going to clean and get as close to that door as I can. And when I get to that door, I am getting out of here.
Wow. So if I'm understanding this, then it's really important to be able to have the relief you need so you can get to your goal of managing your fear, so you can identify the opportunities that exist in the middle of the crisis. That's
Excellent.
what it sounds like to me.
Excellent.
There's always opportunities in the middle of a crisis. And I know we're in this pandemic and we are scared, we're terrified is the truth. With good reason, it's a reasonable fear. Right, Dr. Brown? I'm on the right track, reasonable fear. But at the same time, there are opportunities that exist. Just like this man trying to get to the door. He's gonna clean till he gets to the door so he can escape. Was that the point?
Yes, and he ultimately became a well-known psychologist.
Wow.
Yes.
Did he?
Yes. Now, this is maybe for another time, but one of the things that happens when we are survivors is a great deal of guilt over the other people who didn't survive. But he did survive. And, I want to get back to the crisis for just a little bit that we are having now, this pandemic.
We're a little bit over time, but we can go ahead.
Real I would like to ask people to contact me because I can give you information concerning things that you can do about your rent, about your student loan. Student loans can be on hold for a good period of time. This is just a little piece of Viktor Frankl's cleaning and going to the door. It's not going to solve everything, but it's a beginning. It was a beginning that led to a great end for him.
Right, because he was able to identify the opportunity in the crisis. The question for you, my audience, is what opportunities could be right in front of you, but you're unable to see it because of the fear that is crippling you right now? Now, in order to help with that, Dr. Brown is offering her expertise in group sessions, which are free for 30 days. You may visit her website, evespeaks.com. You can sign up for the session. You can also reach out to her directly on Instagram or via her email address, which I'm sure will be in a link in the chat. And please, by all means, pick up my book, Peace Beyond the Splinter, Reclaim Your Promise of Peace and Profit from Anxiety's Grip Through Prayer. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will talk to you in another episode of Clarity in Crisis next week, Wednesday at 10 a.m. Thank you, Dr. Brown, for joining us. It was a pleasure, and I know actually that these tips will be helpful to the audience. Have a great day.
Thank you for inviting me, and I totally enjoy giving back.